Sound of Money with Santosh Sirur.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Sound of Money. Today on The Sound of Money, we have a very special guest. We have with us Tejas Gutka, who is the fund manager at the Tata Mutual Fund. Hi Tejas and welcome to The Sound of Money.
Hi Santosh, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure being here.
Apart from being a fund manager, I'm very well aware that you have this weekend bulletin which are curated and related to wealth creation and investing. So, of course, we'll talk about it in our later episodes. But yes, for today, we're going to talk about wealth creation per se. So, Tejas, can I have your views on, with your experience in the industry, what exactly is wealth creation and how important it is for an individual?
So I think it's one of the most important things that the world of investment deals with, right? I mean, the end objective of everything that we do with money is trying to create that big pot that we want for our future, maybe for retirement or future expenses, right? And all of that largely encompasses wealth. Now, wealth, the topic is as simple as it could be, or it's as complicated as it could be. There's this there's this quote in investing which I think is one of my favorite quotes, and I keep quoting it all the time, which is that investing is simple but not easy. It's simple because there are just a few basic principles that if you follow for a very, very long time, I think you're largely through. There is no need for any complexities. It's not easy because our brain tries to make things complex. There's so much biases that kind of creep in along our investment journeys that makes the whole thing very complicated, and which is why I think this quote of simple but not easy is such an important quote to understand and as it pertains to investing. And I think largely that's what we'll try and focus through a number of these episodes, where we'll try to see what are the things that are simple and what are the things that make it not easy.
Yeah. So when it comes to wealth creation, right, people start investing. What is it that you have to share to an average investor? What is that one fundamental or a few fundamental points that one needs to keep in mind when it comes to investing and eventually leads to wealth creation and not really saving?
Right. So, see, the whole crux of this is that, there are, you at your disposal, you have a number of tools when it comes to wealth creations. And one of the tools that gets focused most upon is returns. And this is a tool that, in my view, has the lowest amount of leverage, when it comes to creating wealth. What I mean by leverage is that, if you follow the Pareto principle, which says that, 80% of your results are derived by 20% of your inputs, then I think returns is pretty low on that 20% side. What matters more when it comes to wealth creation are two things, how much you save, or, your savings rate, and for how long can you remain disciplined and invested. So your time horizon, right? These are the two things that, to my mind, are very important but highly misunderstood as far as wealth creation is concerned. On the other hand, I think returns is overemphasized and it gets a little too much attention than it should deserve as far as wealth creation is concerned. Savings, you mentioned savings, right? So savings is a very important first step, right? I mean, the entire journey of wealth creation starts with this realization that you need to save, and then you need to invest those savings. And there's a very interesting research that I read recently, which was the research that was done about 10 years ago, and it kind of took an entire population of people who were close to retirement age, and it looked at their wealth and their investment habits. And it categorized these people into 4 different buckets, right? The first bucket was non-planners. These were people who never had a plan. So they didn't know how much to save. They didn't know where to invest. So they just went with the flow, right? So it was pretty random as far as their process was concerned. The second bucket was called simple planners. These were people who had a plan as to how much they'll save. They didn't know where to invest or how to invest, but they had a decent plan as to, they'll save a certain percentage of their income every year, and they kind of stuck to that plan for a very long time. The third bucket was serious planners. These were people who let's say, had a financial plan in place. So they not only knew the importance of saving and knew how much to save, but they also had a certain plan as to how they will invest. The fourth was successful planners or superstars, right? These were people who had all of this and managed to stick to this investment plan for the rest of their investment journey, right? Now, if you look at the impact that each of these steps had on the end wealth that these people ended up with, the biggest impact happened when you moved from non-planner to planner. So if you simply had a plan to save and you knew how much to save, you ended up with a wealth that was probably 2 to 3x of those people who were non-planners, right? So that
Okay.
again, the Pareto principle, right? The leverage here of that first simple step is very, very high. If you move from a simple planner, which is someone who knew how to save, to someone who knew how to invest, the incremental impact on wealth creation was only about 25 to 35%. Moving from having a financial plan to sticking to it was, the impact was even lesser. So as you add complexities, the incremental returns actually fall. The largest returns or the biggest leverage actually happens in the first step, which is the simple step. So I think having a plan as to knowing how much to save is the first and the most important step in your journey to wealth creation.
Okay. There's this often heard concept or the word called compounding, right? And it's something that people say, oh, if it's compounded for a number of years, then you're really quote unquote wealthy. How true is it? That's one. And my second question related to this is that a lot of people have a kind of not a right approach towards it. What kind of experiences have you come across from this concept?
So, mathematically, the equation of compounding is very simple, right? It says that, your future value of your money is equals to the present value of your money multiplied by your rate of return raised to the power of n being the number of years that you remain invested for. Now, again, as I said, I think a lot of emphasis is placed to the return in this entire equation. Everybody wants to try to maximize the returns. Now, I think the other two variables are more important than returns. And the present value of money is something that we just discussed. Savings, by simply having a plan on savings, you can improve that present value of money, and that will have a very big impact on your end result. The other thing, like you said, is a function of compounding, and the most important element there is the time factor. Right now, typically, we define long term as anything that is more than a year or more than 3 years or so on and so forth. But think about it, your wealth creation journey starts from the time that you start earning up until the age that you retire, and probably goes beyond that, right? So your journey is probably 30, 40, 50 years, right? But you're so used to thinking in terms of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year time frames. Your real investment horizon is actually 30, 40 years. And if you can stick, like we saw in the example that I quoted earlier, if you can stick to this plan, the results are phenomenal at the end of the period. Now, here again, when we talk about returns, there's this beautiful quote that that Warren Buffett has, which is that you can't have a child in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant at the same time, right? So that's about the focus on return, right? You can't get to that retirement early by simply focusing on returns. There are two other factors that matter, and to just kind of demonstrate the importance of time horizon, let's look at another example, right? Let's say that there are two investors, Jack and Jill. They both start working at the age of 18, and they both retire at 65. So they have a pretty long horizon. Now, let's say Jack is the frivolous type. So he kind of spends everything he earns and doesn't save anything, at least until the age of 30. He's spending everything that he earns. Jill, on the other hand, understands the importance of having a financial plan, and so she saves, let's say, 50,000 every year until the age of 30. And she invests that 50,000 every year. Now, at the age of 30, let's assume that the roles reverse. Jack realizes the importance of savings, and therefore he starts saving 50,000 every year for the rest of his life, which is about 35 years. Jill, on the other hand, goes frivolous, and so she stops saving anything, and so there is no incremental investment that she's making for the other 35 years of her journey. Let's also assume that they make a simple 10% annual return, a smooth annual return every year, right? Who do you think will end up with a better retirement corpus, and more importantly, by how much? Now, I think the answer to who will probably be simpler based on the way I'm kind of quoting this example. It's obviously Jill, but I think what is fascinating is the math. By being 12 years earlier than Jack and then not investing anything for the next 30 years, Jill ends up with a corpus that is 2.2 times higher than that of Jack's, right? Wow. Jack ends up with a corpus about 13 million. Jill ends up with a corpus about 30 million, right? Now that here is the importance of time. by simply being 12 years earlier and actually saving a lesser amount, she ended up with a corpus which was 2.2 times higher. And that I think is the biggest leverage that you have as an investor, which is your time horizon. But that's something that gets the least amount of attention from the investors, right?
True. So it's a very important message, Tejas, for especially our younger audiences who've just started working, who've just, even as students, nowadays they earn. It's the best time, can't get better. Get into SIPs, get into that zone, and you look at, the returns in fact, don't even look at the returns, just go on investing. You will have the rewards coming your way later. Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that was really lovely talking to you, Tejas. I'm sure in our coming episodes we'll talk a lot more, including about your, your weekend newsletter, which is equally extremely interesting. So that was Tejas Gutka, who is the fund manager with the Tata Mutual Fund. Thank you once again, Tejas, for joining on The Sound of Money.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, that was the end of this episode of The Sound of Money. A lot more coming up on The Sound of Money in future episodes. From me, Santosh, and Tejas, bye for now.
Sound of Money with Santosh Sirur.